Hello, researchers. Hope you are okay. My name is Malcolm Shambana to take you once again in a research methods topic, and we are looking at the critical part of your research, which is chapter one. I can say all parts are critical, but chapter one is the starting point of your research, and this is the point where a reader would continue reading your research or even stop reading your research. So it's a key point. I know it's to me where I am, it's morning, and I don't know wherever you are, the time you are going to listen to this recording. But I need to mention there is a friend who has motivated me very much, and he has also provided my breakfast. That's Chanda Masabo of Okavango Foods. They make nice snacks there. So if you are also in the morning, you can enjoy your snacks. Try to contact Okavango. You can search for them on Facebook or on WhatsApp. They are there to provide your much needed snack, especially when you are doing your research. So let's dive through in our topic today, which is chapter one, and we are going to look at the contents of chapter one. Relax and enjoy the presentation. Thank you. So I'm your presenter of this topic. My name is Malcolm Shambana. My contact is 0977 If you are contacting me from outside, you can add our country code, which is +260. So my number will read +260 977 488 442. You might as well subscribe to my channel, which is on the YouTube channel, of course. And there you can send me a message and I'll get back to you if you have any questions regarding the today's session. Our learning objectives today is to understand the contents of background information, which is the first part of your introduction section of your thesis, and also to understand the contents of a problem statement. Definitely, your research, your dissertation, or thesis will have an element of an issue which you need to solve. So, this is where we talk about the problem statement. Then, we also need to understand the aims, objectives, and the research questions. This is also part of your introductory part where you're going to tell your readers what you are about to do, what are your aims, and what are your objectives. We also look at the significance of the study. Why are you doing the research? Why is it important? What difference it's going to make? We also look at your scope, the limit of your study. Definitely, your every study topic can be wide, but you need to put boundaries. We also look at your operation definition. Words differ in every meaning, in every language, they differ in meaning. So we have to look at that and understand why you need to present your definition of the terms you are not going to use in your research. So we will go to our introduction. Your introduction is a very critical part for your readers, even for yourself. Though it's summarized after or concluded after you have done, you are complete with your research. Your introduction is the first interaction with your readers. This is where your readers of your research report, project, or thesis or dissertation will decide whether to go ahead with reading your report or stop. So it's that critical that it has to be clear. It has to be clear, no jargons, no strange language, and your reader has to understand where you are coming from. It has to be concise, not very long, because it will bore your readers. Even if you have got a good subject, as long as you have made your introduction long and poorly done, your readers will stop right there and they will not go ahead. Naturally, that's how the human being brain works. I'm sure you can tell from your experience. It also has to be convincing why you are doing that research. It's very critical that your introduction is explaining to the reader the importance of that research. So every institution has its own standards of sections which are required in your introductory research report or your thesis or your dissertation. The ones we are discussing today are the obvious ones, like the background of your research. So uh, it outlines, this section outlines the background of the subject from a broader perspective, of course, then narrows it down to the specific case. In our case, we have been discussing drought. So you need to now ask those basic questions. Remember, I mentioned that there are basic questions like what happened, when, those which are one off, which deserves just one off answer. So you need to discuss what happened. So in our case, we are talking about drought. What is drought? Um, our example, of course, it's the impact of drought on the Zambian economy. I've been using this example. If you have been missing some sessions, you need to go to my YouTube channel and start from the research topic. Then you go at EMS. Then now you catch up with us. So our example is impact of drought on the Zambian economy. That's our research topic. So you need to discuss in your background session what is drought, of course, how Zambia has been experienced drought, the current drought situation. These are, it's not limited to these questions. These are just examples. So you need to give every information you know about drought and the Zambian economy in relation to the Zambian economy. That's what you need to lay down in your background. That's the first section. Not every reader knows what drought is and how it has been happening in Zambia. So you need to push in that information. Even yourself as a researcher, there's some information you might not know right there and then, but You can research and put it in your background section of your introduction. It carries basic information and information which is already out there, and you start narrowing down to the current situation that right now in Zambia we have a drought. That's very key for your introduction. So it shows the reader of your information where you are coming from and where now you are. That's very critical. The first part of your dissertation, thesis, or your research. The next section in your introductory is the problem statement. Your readers are interested to know what issue you are trying to solve or find out or research on. It's very key. If there is no issue, no reader will be interested in your research. So you need to have an issue and state it clearly in your introduction. The problem statement outlines what problem is being investigated. In our case, we are talking of drought. I'll give you this example, which is our current example, our current problem. Zambia is currently facing a problem of drought that has affected agriculture and the energy sectors. And these sectors are major contributors to the country's economy. Sorry, there's a misspelling there. It's supposed to read economy, not economic. Agriculture has been affected by reduced rainfall, which has led to drying up of crops, low crop yields. And Zambia, the entire Zambia being the mining sector, household, manufacturing, depends on hydroelectricity. Hydro, meaning that we are using water to generate our electric power. So, low rainfall implies that even the levels of water generating power have gone low. Level needed to generate power has since reduced. This has been further declared as a national disaster by the Republican president. Have you seen the problem there? There is a big problem. That's your problem statement. You need to mention. This will attract your readers of your thesis, dissertation, or research report. They'll raise their eyebrows. What's happening here? Yes, there is a problem. And they'll get interested to know what you are researching on. Problem statement is very critical pronouncement in your introduction. You need to mention the problem which is there. The other critical part of your introductory section of your research, your thesis, your dissertation is the aims, objective, and your research questions. I had discussed this in detail in my previous session. You can still access that on my YouTube channel. But what you need to bear in mind that these things These three items are linked. Your aims are linked to your objectives. Your objectives are linked to your questions. Your and the, all these three items are also linked to your research topic. A research aim is a statement indicating the general purpose of your research. You need to now at this point you are telling your readers what you are going to do or what has been done in that research. You are telling your readers you have discussed the problems, you have discussed the background. Now, what are you doing yourself? It's at this point you are telling your readers what you are going to do or what you have done in that research. For example, I still insist on our example. Your aim will read us. It's an action. There is an action element there to establish. That's an action. Your aim is to establish the impact of drought on the Zambian economy. That's your aim. To establish the impact of drought on the Zambian economy. You have laid down your research problem. You have laid down your background of drought. You have laid down the background of the Zambian economy. Now, what are you doing yourself? Is to establish the impact of drought on the Zambian economy. Please take this as an example. You can come up with so many topics regarding the drought and the Zambian economy. You can come up with different aims. Aims are different. You can have same background in your introduction, same problem statement, but the aims may differ from one researcher to another. The aims may be different. So you need to now to establish your aim. You have the same background, same problem statement, but the aims may be different. So you need to clearly state your aim in the subject for your reader to understand and follow through whatever you are doing later on in your research. The research objective are specific targets that must be achieved to accomplish your aim. You need to specify how you are going to accomplish your aim. And those are objectives. For example, your aim may be to establish the impact of drought on Zambia's inflation. I've broken down the economy. I've taken to inflation is part of economy. There is also exchange rate, which is part of the economy. There are several items which can come under the subject of economy. So now we are looking at the objectives. Objective you can break down. What really, in what manner are you going to tackle the economy subject? So I've broken down into inflation. It can be also, you can break it down into maybe foreign exchange. It can be interest rates. There are several items which affect the economy, which are under the subject of economy. So now, when you are discussing your objectives, you need to break down your subject into objective, your aim into objective. The aim, since the aim is a general statement. So the research questions are questions that lead to accomplishment of the research objectives. You need to ask now, what is the impact of drought on Zambia's inflation? That will be your research question. That will be your research question, and it will try to address part of your aim, which is the Zambian economy. These are just examples. You can have several research questions, you can have several objectives, but I've just given you one research objective and one research question. But you can have several. For example, you can have to establish the impact of drought on interest rate, to establish the impact of drought on foreign uh, exchange, and so on and so forth. So aims and objectives have to be aligned. Your aims, your objectives, your research questions have to be aligned, and they also have to relate to your research topic. Most topics are wide, very wide. Uh, I can hardly point out a shallow topic. Even discussing a person is wide. So you need to put a limit to what you are discussing in your research. You need to tell the readers where you begin and where you end. The scope is the boundary of the research. It can be geographical. Say we are talking about the subject of drought. You can't discuss drought the entire world, or discuss drought without time limits, without time boundaries. They discuss the world since the beginning of maybe earth. Maybe I'm a Christian. I can even say beginning in the time of Adam and Eve. No, that's not possible. There are limitations. You need to put a scope. So that's why we have put a scope here, which is geographically Zambia. We can't discuss drought in Africa. We don't have that time and resource. So even your research, you need to know the limits of your subject. You need to establish the limits of your subject according to your resources, according to your time. Because if you had to take it open ended, you won't manage, and that project or your research will be a failure. Your research will outlive you. So you need to put a limit of what boundaries are you looking at. Is it Zambia? And or maybe, for example, what gender are you looking at? Is it female? What age group are you looking at? Is it from 16 to 35? All those have to be clearly stated in your introduction of your research. The researcher has to know, the reader of the research has to understand what you are talking about. You may be discussing, if you haven't established that your topic is about this age group, or your topic is about this country, or topic is, the reader will be confused, and you start getting conflicting statements or responses to your research. You can discuss drought in Zambia, but if you haven't mentioned Zambia, you are just discussing drought. The effects of drought may be different from geographically from Zambia to maybe from Zambia may be different from Kenya, Egypt, Morocco. So you need to be specific with your subject. How far are you going with your subject? Are you just discussing Zambia? Are you discussing Africa? Are you discussing the whole entire world? But you need to look at your resources. Are your resources going to discuss this to this extent? Or even drought in Zambia, you can limit it. to drought in central province of Zambia. That's a scope we need to look at. It's very critical that you understand the scope. We are now going to look at this the very where now you need to flow. You need to mention why you are doing that study, especially if you are about to resource to source funds for your research. You need to mention why your study is very important. Is very significant. Is very significant, and what changes it's going to bring to maybe the particular society or the particular user of that information. It's very critical. So, explain why your research is important and who are the beneficiaries of that research. There's a misspelling there. Who are the beneficiaries of that research? And what good is it going to bring? And what knowledge is it going to add to already existing knowledge, already existing literature? And also establish the gap, what others haven't done so far. You need to establish in your explanation of significance of your study, you need to establish what others haven't yet done in terms of that particular topic. That will convince your readers, particularly the significance of study. I really dedicate this one to your supervisors, maybe your institution or your funders. This is where you need to flow. This is where you need to explain why it's important. What difference are you bringing in that research? This is where you need to really express yourself, why you are doing that research. Significance of study. This is where now you need to flow. This is where now you need to express yourself on the importance of your research, especially if you are seeking funds for your research or trying to convince the readers of your research, especially at proposal level. This is where you now need to explain the difference. What difference are you going to bring in that area of study? Are you adding value? You need to look at what other researchers have done, identify the gaps, and mention that you are there to fill in those gaps. That's the significance of study. It's the chance for you to explain why that research is supposed to be done. It's a chance for you. Explain why the research is important and also explain, especially to the beneficiaries of the research. And also explain where there is lack of coverage in that particular topic. In our case, we have been talking about drought in Zambia. So you need to come up with a solution which others haven't brought up that will establish your significance of your research. This is a time in your introduction to express yourself. I regard this as a very important section of your introduction. It talks to the reader of your research. It talks to the reader of the research what your ideas maybe you have come up with, why you did that research, or why you are planning to do that research. It's very critical part of your introductory section of your thesis, dissertation, or research. Words from our dictionaries or dictionaries, they have got different meanings. The same word may mean several things. So when doing your research, you need to tell your readers what you mean by a particular word. A cup for drinking water may mean something else. In your research, may mean maybe something to gather knowledge, or maybe something which you need to identify keywords that are critical and important, those words which may be confusing to the readers of your research. So it's important that you define all the terms, not all of the terms, but especially those which are particularly have got ambiguous elements in them. They have got several meanings. So you need to explain what you mean by a particular term in your research. You need to explain that. It's a very important part of your introduction. It's so that users of your research are not in any way confused by the terms. Even when you look at your dictionary, one word can have even to an extent of 10 meanings. So now you need to be particular about what you mean by those key terms you are going to use in your research, or which you have used in your research. Your reader will not be confused. Interpretation will be in the same line of your thought, because you would have defined your terms. So it's really basically about defining your key terms in your research, and what you mean by those terms. Word may, like I've said, may have different meanings. So there is the operation definition. That part is key in your introduction. We go now to our conclusion, which is a summary of sorry, which is a summary of what you have done. So you are going to mention in your introduction section of your thesis, you are going to mention just a summary, a brief touch on your background, on your problem statement and your aims, and a brief touch on the introduction of the succeeding sections. The sections after your introduction, which is the literature review, you tell them what you're going to do in your literature review. You tell them what you are going to do in your methodology. You tell them what you are going to do in your data collection, data analysis. You tell them just briefly. It's important that that also is allowed, is introduced in your introductory part. You mention that this is what I'm going to do. So your introduction part has clearly explained your entire thesis, dissertation, or research. Just your introduction. And it may cover maybe seven, less maybe seven, maybe at most 10 pages. You would have done your introduction, and the reader will be interested now in knowing what now you're going to do further. So thank you for listening to this session. I look forward to the next session, and you can subscribe to my account for next other videos. You can also like the video if you have enjoyed it and if it's clear. You can also ask question in the comment. I appreciate for you watching this video. Thank you.